Welcome back to the Chamber Matters. Before the break, we were speaking with Ron Monroe, the project lead for Dufferin.biz, and now we're joined by Mark Ostrowski, who is the owner of Laurel Forest Farms and as well as one of the directors on the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
Oh, it's my pleasure to join you. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture. What exactly does it do? What is it?
Okay, well, the DFA is what they call a general farm organization that represents the interests of farmers in Dufferin County. It's really a subgroup of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture operating at the local level.
Okay, and so talk a little bit about your involvement. I mean, and then also talking about your business, because it's another niche. We were talking earlier about niche businesses, and you're in a niche business. So talk a little bit about that as well.
Well, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, I have been involved in directly for about 10 years, and I've been a vice president on their board of directors for probably about 8 of those years. And my involvement as the vice president is it's part of the executive committee, and we help to guide the priorities of the organization and what we do locally at the local level. Yeah.
And then the tree farming business. How did you get into that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, well, I've always had an interest in the outdoors and in tree production and stuff, and I thought it was a good opportunity for me to establish an agricultural industry that I could do along with some other projects that I'm working on, and it's been great.
And actually, Ron, aside from your work with Dufferin.biz, you have your own sort of agriculture business as well, and it's a niche market as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have greenhouses over in East Garifraxa, and we sell to the retail and the general consumers, and we also do a lot of municipal work. So the flowers you see in most of the municipalities around Dufferin County are courtesy of me.
and you know, how do you get in? Like, is this a passion? I mean, not everybody wakes up one morning and says, I think I want to go out and grow gardens and plant flowers. And I mean, we all do that maybe in our own little backyards for our own reasons. But how did you guys get into this type of business?
Well, it's you need to have passion about what you're doing, and because there's a lot of work involved, there can be a financial reward, and there should be a financial reward, but it does take a lot of years to get a business up, like any business, and sometimes I think people make a big deal about agriculture being so difficult. It is difficult, but so is everything else, and you have to stay with it.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with Ron. I think that's an excellent point. Let's not forget that agriculture, a lot of people think agriculture is one industry. And, you know, agriculture really is 25 different industries all under the umbrella of agriculture, and they all have their own unique issues and challenges. It just so happens that they have a common denominator, which is they grow things on the land, or they grow livestock in, you know, outbuildings, what we call outbuildings, or barns. So it's very important, I think, for people to understand that it's many different industries under that one umbrella.
So now with your work with the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, what would you say are some of the challenges that you're seeing with our farmers today?
Well, there are many challenges. As Ron says, in every industry or business there are a lot of challenges, but I would suggest specifically in agriculture the main challenges are shifts in the value of the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar, because it affects exports. And most people know that in Ontario and Canada in general, we export a lot of our agricultural products to the US, who's our largest trading partner. Some of the other issues, you know, if you get into specifics about changing demographics, which affect the availability of farm labor. We import a lot of our labor from Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean, particularly in the summertime, to help with planting and maintenance and then harvesting in the fall. So those are some of the issues affecting agriculture. The high cost of farmland is something that that affects younger people's ability to enter into agriculture.
I think the president of the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, I spoke with him recently, and he was talking about some of the challenges in his niche market as well. So let's take a look at that story right now.
Well, I didn't grow up on a sheep farm. I grew up on a beef and a hog farm. But I decided I was going to have sheep, so I got my first ewes in 1979, and we've got a flock of ewes here that actually is only one of 4 breeds that are truly Canadian, and they were developed at the Central Experimental Farm in Ottawa by Agriculture Canada, and they were released to the industry in 1988, and so we have 1,000 Rideau Arcot ewes, and we lamb them on an accelerated basis where they have the opportunity to lamb about every 8 months. We want to try and get a crop of lambs out of them, and we try and market lambs to the marketplace every 2 weeks, so we have a constant supply, same type of lamb, fed the same, year-round, that's consistent, that the consumers can count on, the retailers can count on, and so that's basically what we do, try and produce a consistent product to the marketplace every couple of weeks. Agriculture's kind of in your blood, right? And you just kind of do it. And sometimes you have good years, and sometimes you have bad years, and you can do planning and forecasting of cash flows and profit and everything else. But then all of a sudden, it doesn't rain for 6 weeks, and that all kind of goes out the window. So it's an occupation where you have to be pretty flexible, and you have to kind of roll with the punches. And it's not always good, and but that's all right. There's usually better days to come when it's not good, and you get up in the morning and you do all the things you should do, and you better be having fun, because if it's not fun, you don't want to get up and do it, that's for sure. What the Federation does in Dufferin is tries to look out for the interest of farmers, and tries to liaison with all levels of government to make sure that there's not excess regulations that are going to cost farmers a whole bunch of money and reduce their profit or make it unable for them to operate easily, to run a business easily, because the people that make government policy aren't farmers, and a lot of them don't understand the agricultural business very well. So that's one of our main roles. The other one is to promote local product, and we have a board of directors made up of representatives from the major livestock species. Dairy, beef, and sheep, and then we also have township representatives, and they're primarily cash crop producers. Well, the challenges right now are the weather. We always complain about the weather. It's either too hot or it's too dry or it's too wet or whatever. But right now it's way too dry, and some of these crops we're only looking at a 60% crop on some of them. Certainly the hay crop was pretty poor. So that's one of the big challenges right now. Certainly the access to land, and to make sure that we have land for farmers actually to farm. Our population is supposed to double or triple or something by the middle of the century or before that, and everybody wants to build houses or have gravel pits and lick up farmland, and somehow we have to feed all these people, and so we're certainly advocates for keeping farmland as farmland and not turning into industrial land, or certainly not gravel or aggregate. So that consumes a fair bit of time, for sure. Well, I think farms are going to get bigger. Cash cropping, I think, is going to get even more popular as the ethanol industry gets bigger, because more than half the U.S. corn crop in the last year has gone to produce ethanol, not gone to feed people. But as there are more government regulation and more overhead put on all farms, for them to maintain profit, they're going to have to get a lot bigger. And some of these small and medium-sized farms, I think, are probably going to disappear. And things are going to get really, really big. There's going to be still smaller farms that cater to farmers market and farm gate sales. I mean, I think they'll probably survive because They may not count on their farm income for their total profit, but the commercial farm's going to get bigger.
So we just heard from Bill McCutcheon, who is the president of the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, and he touched on some things there that we talked about earlier, some of the challenges this year, and even just with farming in general. You know, less crops, the weather plays a big part in how that factors out. Also, he mentioned something about farming or farmers and the landscape getting bigger and going to bigger type farms. What are your thoughts on that?
That's very accurate, Radina. Like a lot of industries, you know, there's concentration in order to improve efficiencies and take advantage of new technologies, and of course, investing in new technology gets expensive. So the consolidation is really an economic factor. But by the same token, a lot of farms are getting smaller. You see a lot of smaller market garden type farms that are specializing into niche categories to meet the needs of the marketplace. So he's right, but there are other elements affecting that too.
And maybe this is a question for both of you, you know, from your experience in Dufferin.biz and then your experience with the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture. How do we educate people, though? How do we make them realize? I mean, they come from the south, they move to the north. How do we make them realize that agriculture is very important here and that we have to maintain it?
Well, the Federation of Agriculture specifically invests in local farm fairs that happen in the fall usually, and also helping to educate children at the school level to understand agriculture. I think over the years the school programs themselves have really not spent a lot of time in their curriculums educating kids. So we've kind of taken it upon ourselves to help educate the teachers, to help educate the children. And we also get involved in a lot of community activities, the farmers markets, and everyone I think is aware that farmers markets are expanding and growing in the last few years. And there are other activities that we do. We have a newsletter and a website and things like that, but trying to get that out to people so that they're aware of it is, as you know, is a big challenge.
And I think the education of this is pretty important these days, because I remember reading somewhere that I believe this is the first generation that's majority of people are not actually connected in any way to the farm. In the past, they'd have grandfathers or parents or, you know, whatever, and now we're 2 or 3 generations away, and most people don't even understand where they get the food other than the grocery store. And that's not really where it comes from.
That's a scary thought. Okay, hold that thought. You're going to stay with us, but thank you very much, Mark, for educating us on Dufferin Federation of Agriculture.
You're very welcome.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about the equine industry. There are more than 10,000 horses that call Dufferin County home. Don't go away.